The sun set over Washington, D.C. as Alyssa Carter stared out her office window. The government building stood quiet, most workers gone for the day. But Alyssa couldn't leave yet, not after what she had just learned. "Ambassador Carter?" A voice called from the doorway. "They're ready for you." She turned to see Frank Winters, a tall man with a weathered face and military posture. His uniform was perfectly pressed, medals gleaming under the office lights. "Thank you, Colonel," she said, gathering her tablet and straightening her blazer. "Hard to believe, isn't it? After all these years wondering if we're alone." Frank nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Though I wish first contact had come with more warning." 3 days isn't much time to prepare to meet an entire galactic civilization, Alyssa agreed. They walked down the hallway together, their footsteps echoing on the marble floor. Security personnel nodded as they passed. Everyone seemed tense, alert. "What do we know about them?" Frank asked. "Not much. They call themselves the Galactic Senate. Over 300 species from across the Milky Way. They've been watching us for decades, apparently." "Watching us. And they're only saying, 'Hello now.'" "They had to vote on it," Alyssa said with a slight smile. "Bureaucracy seems to be universal." They entered the conference room where 6 other people waited around a large table. The president's national security advisor stood as they entered. "Ambassador Carter, Colonel Winters," he said. "We just received word that the Senate representatives will arrive at the agreed location in exactly 2 hours. The president wants this to go smoothly." He looked directly at Frank. "That means no incidents, Colonel." Frank's jaw tightened. "I'm here as military attaché, sir. My job is to protect the ambassador." "Your job is to not start an interstellar war," the advisor replied. "These beings have technology far beyond ours." Alyssa stepped between them. "Gentlemen, please, we're about to make history. Let's focus on that." The meeting continued with briefings on protocol and security. When they finished, Alyssa and Frank boarded a helicopter that would take them to the meeting site, a cleared area in Shenandoah National Park. As they flew over darkened forests, Alyssa studied Frank's face. "You don't trust them," she said. It wasn't a question. "I don't trust anyone I haven't met, Ambassador, especially anyone who's been spying on us for decades." "They call it observation, not spying," Frank shrugged. "Different word, same meaning." The helicopter landed in a large clearing where a temporary landing pad had been constructed. Floodlights illuminated the area, and a small welcome facility had been erected in the past 3 days. Military personnel from all branches stood guard around the perimeter. Inside the facility, Alyssa changed into her formal diplomatic attire while Frank checked in with security. "All clear so far," he reported when they met again. "Though our radar systems are acting strange. They say it's interference from the Senate's approaching ship." "How long?" Frank checked his watch. 20 minutes, according to their last communication. Those 20 minutes passed slowly. Alyssa rehearsed her greeting speech while Frank paced the room, occasionally touching the sidearm holstered under his jacket. Then a staff member burst in. "They're here, but they're not. They didn't use the landing zone." Outside, Alyssa and Frank looked up to see lights in the sky. Not one large ship as they had expected, but hundreds of small orbs descending through the clouds. They glowed with a soft blue light and moved in perfect formation. "Are those all ships?" Alyssa whispered. Before Frank could answer, one of the orbs broke from formation and descended rapidly toward them. Military personnel raised their weapons, but Frank waved them down. "Hold position," he ordered. "No aggressive moves." The orb stopped 30 feet above the ground. Then it simply vanished, and in its place floated a platform carrying 3 very different beings. The platform descended slowly. On it stood a tall, slender creature with grayish-purple skin and 4 arms. Beside it was a massive being that seemed to be made of living stone, with glowing veins running through its rocky surface. The third was almost human-looking except for its golden skin and eyes with star-shaped pupils. The platform touched down, and the golden-skinned being stepped forward. "People of Earth," it spoke in perfect English. I am Senator Lidnar of the Galactic Senate Diplomatic Corps. We greet you in peace and with hopes of friendship. Alyssa stepped forward. Senator Lidnar, I am Ambassador Alyssa Carter of the United States of America representing Earth. We welcome you and your colleagues to our world. The formal introductions continued. The four-armed being was Senator Xanthul of the Arcturian Dominion. The stone creature was Ambassador Krell from a world with an unpronounceable name. We are pleased to finally make official contact, Senator, Lidnar said. Our Senate has been observing Earth for some time. So we understand, Frank said, his voice neutral but his stance wary. Senator Xanthul's upper set of arms moved in a gesture that might have been dismissive. Your world has been classified as a potential membership candidate for decades. Unfortunately, your tendency toward violent conflict has delayed this meeting. Yet here we are, Alyssa said smoothly. And we have much to learn from each other, the dear. Meeting continued as they moved inside the facility. The senators explained the basics of the Galactic Senate, a cooperative body of spacefaring civilizations that shared knowledge, resources, and maintained peace throughout their region of Ita, the galaxy. Earth would enter as a probationary member, Lidnar explained. Full membership rights would be granted after 50 cycles, approximately 60 Earth years. That's quite a waiting period, Alyssa noted. It is standard for developing worlds, Krell rumbled, its voice like stones grinding together. Many still find the process too rapid. Senator Xanthul was among those who voted against opening relations with Earth at all. All eyes turned to the four-armed senator who made no attempt to deny it. Humans have waged war against themselves throughout their recorded history, Xanthul said. They cannot even maintain peace among their own kind. Imagine the chaos they would bring to our civilized Senate. Frank stiffened at the insult, but Alyssa placed a warning hand on his arm. We've made great progress, she countered. And perhaps, with the perspective your civilization offers, we can make even more. The meeting continued for hours. As dawn approached, they moved to a ceremonial exchange of gifts. The Senate representatives presented a data crystal containing basic information about the member species and Senate protocols. As Alyssa presented Earth's gift, a collection of art, music, and literature, a security drone floated into the room. It was small, about the size of a baseball, and moved with rapid, jerky motions. Senator Lidnar frowned. That unit appears to be malfunctioning. The drone suddenly accelerated, heading directly toward Alyssa. Without hesitation, Frank drew his sidearm and fired, hitting the drone with perfect accuracy. It dropped to the floor, sparking. Instantly, more drones appeared, surrounding Frank. Senator Xanthul leapt to his feet. You see? He shouted. They resort to violence at the slightest provocation. This human brought a weapon to a peace meeting. The drone was coming at the ambassador, Frank protested. I was doing my job. The drone was harmless, Xanthul insisted. It was merely scanning for recording devices. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Despite Alyssa's diplomatic efforts, Senator Xanthul demanded they leave immediately. Within an hour, the senators had returned to their ship in orbit. Later that day, Alyssa received their message. Earth's probationary membership was postponed indefinitely. The Senate would instead establish a controlled relationship by sending observers to Earth. I'm sorry, Ambassador, Frank said when they were alone in her office again. I reacted on instinct. Alyssa sighed. You did what you thought was right. But Senator Xanthul got exactly what he wanted, an excuse to limit our involvement. What happens now? They're sending what they call an assessment team, Alyssa said, scanning the message, to establish a more controlled relationship with us unpredictable humans. Frank's expression darkened. That doesn't sound like a cultural exchange. No, Alyssa agreed. It sounds like the beginning of trouble. Neither of them could have guessed just how right they were. Commander Vexorn studied the holographic map of Earth, focusing on a small area in the northern region of the landmass humans called North America. His scaled fingers moved through the glowing display, zooming in on a tiny settlement. Pinewood, Michigan, he said, tasting the strange words. Population 2,763. remote enough for our purposes yet connected to their information networks. Lieutenant Kraszak, his second in command, looked dubious. His metallic skin reflected the blue light of the hologram. Is such a small settlement sufficient for our assessment, Commander? It is ideal, Vexorn replied. The Senate wants information on human defensive capabilities without alerting their governments. This location allows us to observe ordinary humans in isolation. The 12 members of the assessment team stood around the briefing table aboard their cloaked ship. They represented the elite of the Galactic Senate's Enforcer Corps, the finest, warriors from 12 different species, each selected for their combat skills and observation abilities. Our mission parameters are simple, Vexorn continued. We will establish a base near this settlement, observe the humans, and assess their threat level. The Senate has classified Earth as a Class 3 pre-unification culture. They have moderate technology but are hampered by their divisive political systems and their tendency toward violence, added Specialist Miralax, the team's cultural analyst. Her translucent body pulsed with light as she spoke. The incident with the human Colonel Winters confirms their instinctive aggression. Vexorn nodded. Which is why we must be cautious. We will observe from a distance first using drone surveillance and passive scanners. No direct contact until we understand their patterns. That night, the assessment team's ship landed silently in the dense forest, 5 miles outside Pinewood. Stealth generators concealed both the vessel and the prefabricated base they quickly established. By morning, surveillance drones the size of insects were deployed throughout the town. In Pinewood, Jack Daniels noticed nothing unusual as he opened his hunting supply store. At 62, Jack had lived in Pinewood most of his life, except for the years he'd spent as an Army Ranger. Those days were long behind him now, but he still kept himself fit and sharp-eyed. His first customer of the day was Lisa Coleman, the high school math teacher who also happened to be one of the best shots in the county. "Morning, Jack," she said, placing a box of ammunition on the counter. "Getting ready for the weekend competition? Heard anything more about those strange lights in the forest?" Jack shook his head. "Sheriff Martinez drove out there yesterday but didn't find anything. Probably just kids with drones." "Maybe," Lisa said, not sounding convinced. "But my equipment's been acting strange. Cell phone dropping calls, TV getting interference. And, have you noticed how the birds seem different lately? Less singing in the morning." "Now that you mention it," Jack said slowly, "I have noticed the deer acting skittish. Found some unusual tracks out by Miller's Creek, too. Too big for a coyote, but not right for a bear either." Across town, Sheriff Bill Martinez was having a similar conversation with his deputy, Grace Hunt. A former Marine Corps sniper with 3 tours overseas, Grace had moved to Pinewood looking for quiet. Today, she seemed troubled. "Something's not right, Bill," she said as they sat in the cruiser. "I went out to the lake this morning before dawn. All the fish were clustered on the east side, like they were avoiding something in the water. Environmental change, maybe the paper mill upstream released something." Grace shook her head. "The mill's been closed for 2 years. And there's something else. My scope's been fogging up. Not from the inside, from the outside, like something's interfering with the glass." Sheriff Martinez considered this. In his 20 years of law enforcement, 15 as SWAT before coming to Pinewood, he'd learned to trust instincts like Grace's. "Let's drive out to where Jack saw those lights," he decided. "Maybe we missed something yesterday." Unknown to them, their conversation was being monitored by one of Vexorn's surveillance drones. In the alien base, Specialist Miralax highlighted, "The exchange for the commander. These 2 humans appear to have military training," she noted. "Their awareness of environmental changes is surprisingly acute." "Make note, but it's not unusual," Vexorn replied. "Most primitive species rely heavily on their natural senses before developing proper technology." Lieutenant Kraszak was monitoring another feed. "Commander, we have a potential issue. The biological samplers we placed in their water reservoir are malfunctioning. Cause? Unknown. Something in the mineral composition of their water is corroding the outer casing. It's releasing trace amounts of our sampling compounds." Vexorn frowned. "Will it be detectable to humans?" "Unlikely," Kraszak said. but it may cause mild illness. Their primitive digestive systems won't process our compounds efficiently. Continue. Monitoring. If serious symptoms develop, we may need to neutralize the contamination. 2 days later, several children in Pinewood became sick with stomach pains and fever. Among them was Sophia, Sheriff Martinez's 10-year-old daughter. At the small medical clinic, Dr. Paul Wilson was puzzled. "It's not like any stomach bug I've seen," he told the worried parents. "I've sent samples to the county lab, but results won't be back for days." Peter Washington, who worked as an environmental engineer, offered to test the town's water. A Navy veteran who had specialized in water purification systems, Peter had equipment at home that could identify most contaminants. "I'll start testing right away," he promised Sheriff Martinez, seeing the worry on his friend's face. "Sophia will be fine, Bill. We'll figure this out." Meanwhile, in the forest outside town, Kyle Harrison was guiding Deborah Lynch on a hunting trip. Kyle had been a hunting guide for 15 years after learning the skills from his father. Deborah was a lawyer from Detroit who came to Pinewood twice a year to hunt. "Hold up," Kyle said suddenly, raising his hand. His eyes had caught a glint of metal on a tree ahead. That shouldn't be there. They approached carefully. Attached to the tree was a small metallic disc, no bigger than a quarter. "Trail cam," Deborah suggested. "Poachers monitoring deer movements?" Kyle shook his head. "No lens that I can see, and it's not like any trail cam I've ever seen." He took out his phone and photographed it. "Let's report this to Sheriff Martinez. Been too many strange things happening lately." Back at the alien base, an alarm sounded. "Perimeter sensor has been discovered," an officer reported. Vex Orn slammed his fist on the console. "How?" "Unknown. Humans were in proximity to sensor AX7. They appeared to notice it and took images with their communication device. Identify these humans and prepare a tracking profile," Vex Orn ordered. "Lieutenant Krazak, assemble a retrieval team. We need to recover that sensor before they understand what it is." Krazak selected 3 other team members for the mission. "Rules of engagement, Commander?" "Non-lethal containment. Retrieve the sensor, administer memory suppressants to any humans involved, and withdraw. This is a routine containment operation." Krazak's team prepared their equipment. Each wore an advanced stealth suit that bent light around them, making them nearly invisible. They carried neural disruptors designed to temporarily paralyze humans without permanent damage. "These are primitives," Krazak reminded his team. "Even if they detect us, their weapons are ineffective against our armor. Complete the mission quickly and efficiently." As night fell over Pinewood, Sheriff Martinez and Deputy Hunt drove toward the location Kyle had reported. Neither noticed the 4 shadowy figures moving through the trees parallel to the road, nor the small drone following their vehicle from above. "This is where Kyle said he found it," Sheriff Martinez said as they parked near a trailhead. "About half a mile in." Grace Hunt took her rifle from the cruiser's secure rack. "Standard procedure, right? Treat it as potential evidence." The sheriff nodded, checking his sidearm. "Let's see what we're dealing with." As they started down the trail, Krazak's team moved into position. The lieutenant activated his communication implant. "Targets approaching the sensor location," he reported back to base. "Preparing to intercept." "Acknowledged," came Vex Orn's voice. "Remember, these are just primitive humans. This should be a simple operation." It was the last thing anyone would call simple when it was over. Sheriff Martinez and Deputy Hunt walked slowly down the forest trail, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The night was unusually quiet. No crickets chirping, no owls hooting. "You feel that?" Grace asked, stopping suddenly. Bill nodded, like we're being watched. Grace unslung her rifle, checking that a round was chambered. As a Marine sniper, she had developed a 6th sense for danger. Right now, that sense was screaming at her. "I'm going to circle around," she whispered. "You keep going toward the spot Kyle marked. Whatever's out there, maybe we can catch it between us." Bill didn't argue. He'd worked with Grace long enough to trust her instincts. 10 minutes, then I'll stop and wait for your signal." Grace slipped into the trees, moving with the silent precision she'd learned in the military. Her night vision was excellent, honed by years of operations in darkness. She moved from tree to tree, pausing to listen between steps. Lieutenant Krasizak watched the humans through his enhanced vision. He signaled to his team, directing 2 of them to follow the female while he and the 4th member tracked the male. The female is armed with a projectile weapon, he noted. Primitive design. No threat to our armor. His team member, Specialist Dorvan, nodded. She moves with unusual skill for a primitive. Possible military training. Irrelevant. Krasizak dismissed. Even their elite warriors are no match for our technology. Through his neural link, Krasizak ordered the 2 team members to disable the female first, then join him to contain the male. They acknowledged and moved into position. Grace felt something change in the air around her, a subtle distortion, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. She froze, slowly raising her rifle and activating the thermal scope. Through it, she saw 2 shapes moving toward her. Humanoid, but wrong somehow. Their heat signatures were muted, as if being masked. Without hesitation, Grace dropped to one knee and fired. The .308 round struck one of the figures squarely in the chest. There was a strange crackling sound, like electricity shorting out, and suddenly the figure became fully visible, a tall, armored being that staggered backward in obvious shock. The second figure fired some kind of weapon at Grace. She felt her left arm go numb but managed to work the bolt on her rifle and fire again. This round caught the second attacker in what seemed to be a joint in the armor where the arm met the shoulder. The creature made a high-pitched sound and fell back. "Bill!" Grace shouted into her radio. "Contact. 2 unknown hostiles." Sheriff Martinez heard Grace's warning and drew his sidearm. He'd been in enough dangerous situations to know when to retreat and when to advance. This was definitely time for retreat. He began backing up the trail toward the cruiser, moving from tree to tree for cover. Through his earpiece, he could hear Grace breathing hard. "Grace, report. I've been hit with something," she replied, her voice strained. "Left arm's numb, but I got 2 of them. They're not human, Bill. Repeat, not human." Before Bill could respond, he sensed movement to his right. He turned and fired 3 rapid shots. His bullets seemed to hit nothing. But then a flickering occurred and suddenly a tall figure in armor appeared, staggering slightly. Lieutenant Krasizak couldn't believe what was happening. His armor's stealth system had failed after being struck by primitive bullets. More shocking, the projectiles had actually penetrated the outer layer of his armor. The Senate's intelligence on human weapons was clearly flawed. "Abort mission," he commanded through his neural link. "Retreat and regroup." His remaining team member, positioned behind Sheriff Martinez, fired his neural disruptor. The beam struck the sheriff in the back, and he fell to the ground, his body seizing. Krasizak rushed forward to retrieve the fallen human. According to protocol, they would need to take him for memory suppression treatment. But as he approached, the human somehow rolled over, raised his weapon, and fired directly at Krasizak's face. The primitive bullet shattered the lieutenant's helmet visor, sending painful fragments into his face. Howling in pain, Krasizak stumbled backward. This shouldn't be possible. These were supposed to be primitives. Grace heard the shots and forced herself to move despite her numb arm. She navigated through the trees until she saw Bill on the ground, still gripping his sidearm. 2 strange figures were retreating into the forest, one helping the other. "Bill!" She ran to him, keeping her rifle trained on the retreating figures. "I'm okay," he gasped, trying to sit up. "Some kind of stun weapon. Can't feel my legs yet." Grace helped him to a sitting position, then raised her rifle and fired 2 more shots at the retreating figures. One shot missed, but the other struck one of the creatures in what appeared to be its leg, causing it to fall. "We need backup," Bill said, his voice growing stronger as the weapon's effects began to wear off. "Whatever these things are, they're way beyond our pay grade." Grace nodded and began helping him to his feet. "Can you walk?" "Getting feeling back now," he said. "Let's get to the cruiser and call this in." Back at the alien base, Commander Vexorn received the disastrous news. 2 of his elite team members injured, their advanced armor penetrated by primitive projectile weapons, and the mission a complete failure. How is this possible? He demanded as the medical team treated Lieutenant Krasizak's facial wounds. They're weapons, Krasizak said through clenched teeth. The impact force was far greater than our intelligence indicated, and they moved with training and precision, Commander. These weren't ordinary primitives. Vexorn paced the command center. Specialist. Miralax, I want complete profiles on these 2 humans immediately. Find out what makes them different from the others. Miralax's body pulsed with nervous light. Commander, preliminary data is already coming in. The female, designated as Grace Hunt, served in their military as what they call a sniper. The male, Bill Martinez, has extensive training in their law enforcement tactical units. Military veterans, Vexorn mused. So we encountered their equivalent of our enforcers. Bad luck, but understandable now. There's more, Commander, Miralax continued. Our population scan shows that approximately 28% of the adults in this settlement have similar military or tactical training backgrounds. Vexorn froze. That can't be correct. Check your data. The data is accurate, Commander. This small settlement contains an unusually high concentration of what humans call veterans, former military personnel who have returned to civilian life. This revelation stunned Vexorn. In the Galactic Senate, military training was reserved for designated warrior castes who served for life. The idea of trained warriors living as ordinary civilians was unheard of. What about their weapons? He asked. An equipment specialist stepped forward. The projectile weapons they used are outdated by their own military standards, Commander. They appear to be personal weapons, not official issue. Yet they proved capable of penetrating our armor's outer layer due to the high velocity and unusual composition of the projectiles. Vexorn made a decision. Contact the ship. We need reinforcements, and inform the Senate that the situation has escalated. These humans are more dangerous than anticipated. Meanwhile, Sheriff Martinez and Deputy Hunt had reached their cruiser. Grace's arm was regaining feeling, and Bill could walk again, though unsteadily. Who do we even call about this? Grace asked, as they drove quickly back toward town. FBI? Military? First things first, Bill said. We need to warn the town. If those things are hostile, people need to be ready. Ready for what? An alien invasion? Who's going to believe that? Bill gave her a grim smile. This is Pinewood, Grace. Half the town has been preparing for something like this their whole lives. As they approached the town limits, Bill picked up the radio. Dispatch, this is Sheriff Martinez. I need you to activate the emergency phone tree. Tell everyone to stay inside, lock their doors, and have their emergency kits ready. We've got a situation. In Pinewood, people began calling each other, spreading the word. Jack Daniels received a call from Lisa Coleman. The sheriff's activated the emergency system, she told him. Something about an incident in the forest. Jack didn't need to hear more. He went to his back room and opened a large gun safe. Inside were several rifles, handguns, and boxes of ammunition. Been wondering when I'd need these again, he muttered to himself as he began loading magazines. Across town, other residents reacted similarly. Peter Washington checked his home security system and made sure his shotgun was loaded. Kyle Harrison called other local hunting guides to warn them about possible danger in the forest. What Commander Vexorn didn't understand yet was that Pinewood wasn't just any small town. It was a community where self-reliance and preparedness were ways of life. A place where everyday civilians had skills that, in other worlds, would be reserved for elite warriors. And they were about to prove just how dangerous they could be. The Galactic Senate responded to Commander Vexorn's urgent request within hours. A large transport ship descended through Earth's atmosphere under cover of night, its advanced cloaking technology hiding it from human detection systems. It landed in a clearing near the assessment team's base, and 50 elite enforcers marched out in perfect formation. Commander Vexorn met the reinforcement leader, Captain Drelvex, outside the base. The captain stood nearly 7 feet tall, his exoskeletal armor gleaming in the moonlight. The Senate is most displeased with this situation, Commander. Drelvex said, his voice like grinding metal. 2 of your team injured by primitives? It's unprecedented. These humans are not what our intelligence suggested, Vexorn replied defensively. Many have military training. Their weapons are more effective than predicted. Excuses, Drelvex dismissed. The Senate has given me command authority. My enforcers will secure this settlement and extract your team. If the humans resist, we are authorized to neutralize them. Vexorn looked alarmed. Neutralize an entire settlement? That goes against protocol for Class 3 civilizations. The classification has been temporarily suspended given the threat level, Drelvex said coldly. These humans have seen our kind. Knowledge of our existence cannot spread. As the 2 commanders spoke, Drelvex's enforcers were already deploying around Pinewood. They moved with precision, setting up motion sensors, energy barriers, and neural disruptors at key points. By dawn, they had established a complete perimeter around the town. What they didn't realize was that they had triggered dozens of trail cameras and hunting sensors placed throughout the forest by Pinewood's residents over the years. At dawn, Jason Miller was checking the feeds from his trail cameras. Jason managed the local hardware store, but before that, he had been a Marine Corps combat engineer. He had set up an extensive camera network to monitor wildlife movements, a hobby that was about to prove unexpectedly useful. What the hell? He muttered, staring at his computer screen. The night vision footage showed strange figures moving through the forest, placing objects on trees and in the ground. They were humanoid, but clearly not human, with odd proportions and what looked like advanced armor. Jason grabbed his phone and called Jack Daniels. Jack, you need to see this. Something seriously weird is happening in the woods. Within an hour, Jason's small house was crowded with people. Sheriff Martinez and Deputy Hunt were there, still looking shaken from their encounter the previous night. Jack Daniels, Lisa Coleman, Peter Washington, and several other veterans and hunters gathered around Jason's computer as he played the footage. So I wasn't hallucinating, Grace said grimly. There really are aliens in our forest. And they shot you with some kind of stun weapon? Peter asked, examining the footage closely. Bill nodded. Took about 15 minutes to wear off completely, but Grace managed to wound at least 2 of them. How? Lisa asked. If they have technology advanced enough for space travel. Their armor has weak points, Grace explained. The joints, the visor, and they weren't expecting real resistance. My rifle rounds penetrated when I hit those spots. Jason zoomed in on one section of footage. They're setting up some kind of perimeter around the town. Look at these devices they're placing. Jack studied the image. Reminds me of motion sensors we used in Afghanistan, but way more advanced. They're containment tactics, Bill said. They're trying to keep us in. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Then Sheriff Martinez spoke. We need to prepare for the worst. If they're hostile, and it sure seems like they are, we need to be ready. Ready for what? Peter asked. To fight aliens? With what? Hunting rifles against spaceships? If Grace could hurt them with a 308, they're not invincible. Jack pointed. Out. And we have plenty of guns in this town. More than guns, Jason added. I've got blasting equipment from the quarry job last year. Demolition charges, detonators. I know it sounds crazy, Bill said, but we might be the only ones who can respond fast enough. By the time we convince the government what's happening and they send the military, it might be too late. Lisa, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. The school, we need to get the children to safety first. The old mine tunnels, Kyle Harrison suggested. He had joined them after getting a call from Jack. They run deep under the hills, away from town. We could move the families there. Sheriff Martinez nodded. Okay, here's what we do. Lisa, you and Paul Wilson organize the evacuation to the mine tunnels. Peter, can you get the emergency generators and supplies from the town hall? Peter nodded. Already on it. Jack, Jason, Kyle, you're with me and Grace. We need to scout their positions, figure out what we're up against. I can help with that, said Scott Wilkinson, who had arrived with his twin brother Sean. The Wilkinson brothers ran the local farm, but both had served in the Army. We can use our crop duster to fly over the forest, get a bird's eye view. Won't they detect the plane? Grace asked. Sean smiled. Not if we fly at treetop level. Did it plenty of times in training. The meeting broke up as everyone hurried to their tasks. Jason and Jack went to gather weapons and ammunition from their respective collections. Kyle began organizing guides who knew the forest. The Wilkinson brothers headed to their airfield. Sheriff Martinez and Deputy Hunt returned to the station to coordinate the town's response. They called in all off-duty deputies and set up a command center. Still think no one will believe us? Bill asked as they worked. Grace smiled grimly. Doesn't matter now, believe or not, everyone's responding. That's Pinewood for you, always ready for the worst. At the alien base, Captain Drelvex received reports of increased human activity in the settlement. They've detected us, he informed. Commander Vexorn. Multiple humans are gathering in one dwelling and now they're dispersing with purpose. What kind of purpose? Vexorn asked. Some appear to be evacuating civilians to an underground location. Others are gathering weapons. 2 humans are preparing a primitive flying machine. Vexorn looked concerned. They're organizing a defense, quickly, much faster than expected. It makes no difference, Drelvex said dismissively. My enforcers are the finest warriors in the Senate forces. These humans have simple projectile weapons and no formal military structure. Do not underestimate them, Vexorn warned. The 2 that injured my team were ordinary law enforcement, not even their military. Your team was careless, Drelvex replied. Mine are not. He turned to his lieutenant. Accelerate the timeline. Begin the containment operation now. Use neural disruptors on any human who resists. The lieutenant saluted. As ordered, Captain. High above Pinewood, Scott Wilkinson piloted his crop duster while his brother operated a modified camera system they had rigged to the underside of the plane. They flew just above the treetops, the engine roaring. There, Sean shouted over the noise, pointing to a clearing. I saw something reflecting sunlight. Scott banked the plane for another pass. This time they both saw it. A large structure that seemed to shimmer in and out of visibility, like a mirage in the desert. Some kind of cloaking technology, Sean said, snapping photos with the camera. But our eyes can still see the distortion. Look at the north side, Scott pointed. Those are ships, small ones around a bigger one. Sean zoomed the camera in. Holy shit, this is really happening. Before they could make another pass, something struck the plane. The engine sputtered and smoke began pouring from it. We're hit, Scott shouted, fighting the controls. Some kind of energy weapon. Can you get us back to town? Sean asked, gripping his seat as the plane lurched. Not going to make it that far, Scott said, scanning the ground below. Hang on, going to try for that field. The plane descended rapidly, skimming the treetops before crash landing in a small field. Both brothers were bruised but alive, and they quickly climbed out of the damaged plane. We need to get these photos back to town, Sean said, checking that the camera was intact. Looking back toward the forest, they saw several armored figures emerging from the trees, moving toward them with inhuman speed. Scott pulled a pistol from his jacket. Run, I'll hold them off. Like hell, Sean said, drawing his own weapon. Together, like always. The brothers stood side by side as the alien enforcers approached. The first real battle for Pinewood was about to begin. 3 days of intense fighting changed everything. The people of Pinewood fought with a determination that shocked the Senate forces. The Wilkinson brothers had survived their encounter in the field, managing to wound several enforcers before retreating into the dense woods they had known since childhood. Their photos made it back to town, giving the defenders crucial information about the alien base. In Pinewood, the hunting supply store became a command center. Jack Daniels distributed weapons and ammunition, while Sheriff Martinez coordinated defense teams. Grace Hunt trained volunteers in basic marksmanship, focusing on the weak points in the alien armor she had discovered. Jason Miller and Peter Washington turned their technical skills to devastating effect. They rigged demolition charges from the quarry along likely approach routes and modified farming equipment into makeshift defenses. Lisa Coleman used her mathematical mind to calculate optimal firing positions and fields of fire. The aliens, despite their advanced technology, found themselves increasingly frustrated. Their stealth systems, nearly perfect against most species, somehow failed against the humans' uncanny ability to spot minute disturbances in the environment. Hunters and outdoorsmen, attuned to the slightest movements in the forest, detected the enforcers even when their instruments showed they were invisible. When the Senate forces tried to use their short-range teleportation devices to outflank the humans, they found themselves materializing in kill zones. Nathan Kim, who taught physics at the high school, had quickly identified energy fluctuations that preceded teleportation. He helped the defenders predict where the aliens would appear. By the third day, Captain Drelvex had lost 27 of his 50 enforcers, with 15 more injured. Commander Vexorn watched with growing concern as the campaign fell apart. "We must withdraw and reassess," Vexorn argued in the command center. "These humans are nothing like our intelligence indicated." Captain Drelvex, his pride wounded by the unexpected resistance, refused. "They are primitives with projectile weapons. We have the technology of 1,000 worlds." "Technology that is failing against their tactics," Vexorn pointed out. "Their knowledge of this terrain negates our advantages, and their civilian population fights with the skill of trained warriors." Before Drelvex could respond, an alarm sounded. The perimeter sensors detected a large human force approaching from the north, Jack Daniels leading a team of hunters and veterans in a direct assault on the alien base. "Impossible," Drelvex snarled. "How did they locate us?" At that moment, an explosion rocked the base. The Wilkinson brothers had used their knowledge of demolition to target the base's power generators. As emergency systems activated, a second explosion hit the communications array. Commander Vex Orn made a decision. "I'm taking command under emergency protocols. Signal the ship in orbit. We need immediate extraction." "You would retreat?" Drelvex demanded. "I would survive," Vexorn replied, "to ensure the Senate understands what we face here." As the remaining Senate forces prepared for emergency evacuation, a priority transmission came through from the Galactic Senate itself. High Commissioner Zalvex, one of the most senior officials in the Senate Diplomatic Corps, was en route to Earth. "The situation has been escalated to highest priority," the message stated. "Maintain position but cease all offensive operations. High Commissioner Zalvex will arrive within 12 hours to assess the situation personally." Captain Drelvex was furious but had no choice but to comply with orders from the Senate itself. Commander Vexorn felt only relief. Perhaps now the Senate would understand the true nature of humanity. In Washington, D.C., Ambassador Alyssa Carter was awakened by an urgent call. A massive alien ship had appeared in orbit and was broadcasting a message requesting immediate diplomatic contact. The Galactic Senate, it seemed, had decided to abandon their covert approach. Within hours, representatives from major world governments gathered for an emergency session. Colonel Frank Winters, whose actions at first contact had partially triggered this crisis, stood grim-faced behind Ambassador Carter as she prepared to meet High Commissioner Zalvex. "What do we know about the situation in Michigan?" Alyssa asked Frank quietly. "Reports are confused," he replied. "Local authorities reported some kind of armed conflict in a town called Pinewood. When federal agents arrived, they found evidence of a battle but were blocked from entering by locals who claimed it was a training exercise. Something's very wrong there." Before they could discuss further, the doors opened and High Commissioner Zalvex entered. Nearly 7 feet tall with crystalline skin that seemed to contain swirling galaxies, the alien had an undeniable presence. "Ambassador Carter," Zalvex spoke, voice resonating oddly in the room. "We must discuss a grave situation. It seems there has been a misunderstanding between our peoples." Alyssa straightened. "High Commissioner, we've received reports of an attack on American citizens. Is your misunderstanding related to this?" Zalvex's crystalline features shifted in what might have been discomfort. "I have come to negotiate an immediate cessation of hostilities and to correct certain errors in our assessment of humanity." The meeting lasted for hours. Finally, A ceasefire was arranged. A joint delegation would travel to Pinewood to resolve the situation. As they prepared to depart, Frank approached Alyssa. "They're afraid," he said quietly. "Whatever happened in Pinewood scared them badly." "How can you tell?" she asked. "The High Commissioner keeps talking about reassessment and unprecedented factors. That's diplomatic language for, we were wrong and don't know what to do now." In Pinewood, Sheriff Martinez and his makeshift militia maintained their defensive positions even as word came of the ceasefire. No one was taking any chances until they had guarantees. Jack Daniels and Grace Hunt watched from a hilltop as a convoy of black government vehicles approached the town. "Think they'll believe what happened here?" Grace asked. Jack shrugged. "Doesn't matter if they believe it. It happened. And I bet those aliens won't forget it either." When the joint human-alien delegation arrived, they found a town transformed. Ordinary citizens stood guard with hunting rifles and makeshift barricades protected the streets. The aliens, led by Commander Vex Orn, showed visible unease as they faced the very humans who had decimated their forces. Ambassador Carter was shocked when she learned the full story. "You're telling me the civilian population of this town fought off an alien military force?" Sheriff Martinez nodded. "We didn't have much choice. They came after us. We defended ourselves." High Commissioner Zal Vex studied the humans carefully. "In all my centuries, I have never encountered a species where combat capability is so distributed. In the Senate worlds, warriors are a separate caste, specially bred and trained from birth. The idea that ordinary civilians could defeat our elite enforcers is unprecedented." Later, as the diplomats worked out formal terms, Commander Vex Orn met privately with Sheriff Martinez. "I must understand," the alien said. "You are not a warrior by caste. You are what humans call law enforcement. Yet you organized an effective resistance against superior technology." Bill shrugged. "Marines taught me how to fight. SWAT taught me tactics. But mostly, I just know the people here. Everyone has something to contribute in a crisis. And the others? The hunters, the teachers, the store owner? They are not warriors either?" "Some were once," Bill explained. "Veterans who served their time and came home. Others just learned to shoot for hunting or sport. But when threatened, humans tend to come together and fight back. That's just who we are." Commander Vex Orn seemed troubled by this concept. "Among the Senate worlds, this would be chaos. Untrained civilians with weapons. But I cannot deny the effectiveness." 1 month later, the Galactic Senate formally voted to approach Earth, with a very different relationship than originally planned. Instead of the standard probationary status, Earth was offered a special partnership agreement that recognized humanity's unique qualities. Senator Xanthul, who had opposed Earth's membership from the beginning, addressed the Senate one final time on the matter. "I was correct that humans are violent and unpredictable," he said. "But I failed to recognize that these same qualities make them formidable allies. A species where any civilian can fight like a warrior is not one we wish to have as an enemy." The Senate's final report on the Pinewood incident became required study at their military academies. Its conclusion was simple but profound. Humanity represents an evolutionary path we have not encountered before. Their history of constant conflict has created a species where warrior knowledge is preserved and transmitted culturally. Their capacity for resistance is not centralized, but distributed throughout their population. Standard protocols for species integration must be entirely reconsidered. In Pinewood, life gradually returned to normal. Jack reopened his hunting supply store. The Wilkinson brothers repaired their crop duster. Lisa Coleman returned to teaching math. But things had changed, in subtle ways. The town became a quiet pilgrimage site for alien diplomats and military observers, all trying to understand how ordinary humans had done the impossible. As for Sheriff Bill Martinez, he kept the unusual bullet holes in his cruiser. "Just a reminder," he would say when asked about them, "that you never really know what people are capable of until they're tested."